please rise for the invocation by Reverend Mark Andrews, St. Luke's United Methodist Church.
Good evening. Let us pray. Holy God, Creator and Sustainer, in your infinite wisdom you have given us guidance in the best ways to live. This evening we are gathered as civil servants who work to make living, sharing, and working together fruitful, fulfilling, and just. We pray for those who serve in positions of great responsibilities and those of lesser responsibilities, those who represent thousands and those who serve hundreds, those whose decisions will affect generations still to come, and those who serve the immediate needs of today. Grant that every civil servant may treat the rich and the poor, the young and the old, the educated and the uneducated, with dignity and fairness. May they serve without prejudice or partiality in times of prosperity or poverty. O God, may every civil servant be a person of integrity, reliability, and commitment, one who serves out of sincere compassion without thought to personal gain, status, or prestige. Give them courage to do their best. Grant them mercy when they fail. And as they seek to make our community a better place to live, may we also be a place known for its mercy, justice, righteousness, and fairness. Gracious God, be merciful to our nation and to those who lead us at every level of government. Give to each a sense of calling, and give us all a pure heart, and the peace and joy of knowing that we have taken the high road. This we pray in your righteous and holy name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, our barbership harmony group's not here, are they? Well, we'll present this. If they come in a little later, we're going to be treated to a couple of melodies by the barbershop quartet. That may be a first for Hickory City Council, but it may never happen. Okay. Something we're always proud of. You have the award. Who has the award for the Distinguished Service? Oh, yeah. Who's going to represent the city and receive it?
Karen. We're calling her Hop-Along her when she broke her ankle.
Ready. Okay. We do know, let me tell you, it is tough to work in the budget office. We are very proud of the fact that for the 18th year, is that what it is? Yes. The 18th year, we are receiving the Distinguished Budget Award. And what this means is we have gone above and beyond the norm that the typical municipality strives for to a higher level of reporting and disclosure in our budget. And it makes for a very long document. It is not dozens of pages. It's lots of pages. But that's the commitment we've made, is we're going to continue to operate in that manner. Whereas the GFOA, which is Government Finance Officers Association, has bestowed upon the City of Hickory's Budget Office the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for the 18th consecutive year. Whereas this award is the highest form of recognition in governmental budgeting, representing a significant achievement by the City of Hickory and reflecting the commitment of the City Council and staff to meeting the highest principles of governmental budgeting. Whereas in order to receive this award, the Budget Office satisfied nationally recognized guidelines for effective budget presentation that are designed to assess how well a city's budget serves as a policy document, a financial plan, an operations guide, and a communications device. Now therefore be it resolved that the Hickory City Council hereby recognizes and honors the Budget Office staff upon receipt of the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award and its efforts to improve the quality of budgeting and provide an excellent example for other governments throughout North America.
Thank you.
Let's have a hand here.
Thank you.
Make a speech?
No, just thank you, everybody. It's a group effort always, and especially this year. I appreciate it.
You're a trooper. We appreciate
Thank
you
you.
coming out for this.
Time is bad, so putting that document together.
Warren Wood tells you to do something, do it. And we have Gar and Lauren.
That's too official.
Well, okay. If you would come forward.
Good evening. My name is Laurie Hoover, and I am a member of the Business Development Committee for the City of Hickory. The purpose of the Business Development Committee is to support the growth and continuation of existing as well as new business ventures in the Hickory community. As an extension of Life Well Crafted, the City of Hickory established Business Well Crafted Awards to recognize those and thank those businesses and their employees who have made a huge contribution and impact in the community for many generations. The award honors a business that has been in the Hickory area and operating for at least 75 years. The recipient of May's Award goes to Fry Regional Medical Center. Fry Regional Medical Center was established in 1911 as Richard Baker Hospital by Dr. Jacob Shuford. It was the only hospital between Statesville and Asheville and one of the first privately owned hospitals in the state. It opened with 14 beds, 1 doctor's office, 1 exam room, 1 waiting room, 1 operating room, and a delivery room and a kitchen. Today, after a century of growth and expansion, Fry Regional Medical Center now has 335 beds, over 300 physicians in 35 various fields, as well as a professional staff of more than 1,400, making Fry Hospital one of Hickory's largest employers. Fry Regional Medical Center makes its community a priority by donating to over 40 local nonprofits and providing approximately $20 million in charity each year. Fry's main campus includes a comprehensive heart center, accredited cancer center, bariatric surgery program, orthopedics, inpatient and outpatient rehabilitation, neurosciences, a women's center with a level 3 nursery and pediatrics, and the Stroke Center at Fry Regional Medical Center is the only primary stroke center in the county. Fry also has several extended campuses to serve families throughout the area, including Fry Care Outpatient Imaging Center, Cardiopulmonary Rehabilitation, Infusion Care, Vein and Wound Center, Piedmont Therapy, Fry South Campus for Psychiatric Services, Tate Surgery Center, Uniform Pain Treatment Center, and 2 urgent care facilities located in the Conover and Hudson areas. I'd like to invite Gar Atchison, Vice President of Business Development for Fry Regional Medical Center, to receive this month's Business Well Crafted Award.
Thank you. I'd also like to thank Laurie and the other members of the Business Development Committee for the wonderful job they've done of representing the interests of the business community and helping us identify some things we need to be working on for the betterment of our community and for the next generation. And I also see Mark Hickory back there. Is there anybody else in the committee that is here? But thank you all very much. I want to recognize some people, some special people. As you know, every year the Hickory Hive does leadership. I think it's 2000 and beyond, or leadership 2000 and beyond. And I'm always privileged to be asked to mentor for a week some of the most outstanding young people that you'll ever have a chance to meet. In the past, I've mentored. They've all been memorable. They've all gone on to seek higher educations and have been very successful. But a couple of years ago, I mentored a young lady who became a Park Scholar, which is the equivalent of a Morehead Scholar for NC State students. And then I saw at the paper this morning, I think, that Liz Menard, who I mentored a couple of years ago, is the valedictorian and is going off to Vanderbilt. So we're always proud to be able to take a role in this. Is the city staff, have they asked you to take a role this year too?
Yep.
Is your protege here?
She's coming the week of Memorial Day.
Yeah, next week.
Okay. Well, I had asked the three who were going to be with me, I asked them to come to the council meeting so they could get an idea of one of the most outwardly significant things we do, which is conduct the city's business at a council meeting. So I'm pleased to say we have with us, I'm going to introduce the prettiest one first, Kimberly Diamante. And this is in no order of looks, okay? Secondly, Anthony Finessu. Both of them, those names are both Italian. And then Thomas Bledsoe, and that's called the county name, that's for sure. And we are delighted I'm delighted to have the chance to work with you. And I know, as always, I'm going to be calling on Chief Holler and Mac McLeod and Chief Atkins and Dana and some of the others to help me introduce to these young people what it is we do day in and day out to manage the city. And we also have a member of our youth council from grade T4, a freshman, visiting with us. Alana Church is in the back row with her sister. I'm kidding. Okay. We have persons requesting to be heard. First, Larry Pope. Larry has given his address at 225 4th Street Place Southwest. His topic is comment on Morganton and Newton swimming pools related to Hickory.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council, Mr. Berry, Mr. Crone, Attorney Crone. Thank you so much for allowing me to be heard. I was flabbergasted this morning by watching television when the news was on and they were talking about the accomplishments of Morganton and Newton, when they were talking about the amount of money that these two cities spent in rehabbing their swimming pools. Morganton spent a little bit over $200,000, $100 and some thousand by the Recreation Council and the other from the city of Morganton. Newton likewise spent money rehabbing their swimming pool for their citizens. I had to wonder, why is it that we have smaller cities in population, tax base, and other things compared to the city of Hickory when we have been told as citizens of the city that the city can't afford to have aquatics activities for the citizens of our city? I would say that not only should we be setting examples for these two cities that are much smaller in size than the city of Hickory, but they are setting examples for us. Does this mean that we should go sit down with them, ask them, how are you able to do this? And we seem not to be able. I think about the thousands of dollars that we spent bringing in consultants from Seattle, Washington, and other cities around the country to do surveys to find out what it was that our citizens wanted and was willing to pay for. When we got the response from citizens out of Northwest, Northeast Hickory that we should have swimming pools in every quadrant of our city, and that they were willing to have their taxes raised to pay for these facilities, and then the city disregarded what they asked the citizens about what they saw as a need for our city. I would recommend to you as a city council that you sit down with these other governmental agencies that are so close to us, thank you, that are so close to us and that is able to do what we should be doing for our citizens. So my recommendation to you is please take the time, sit down, talk to them, and do what we need to do as a city to give full recreation, especially aquatics, to the citizens of our city. Thank you.
Next, Mr. James Thomas Shields, address listed 2442 23rd Street Drive, Northeast. Topic, public information.
Thank you, Council. Once again, I am here to talk about reality. I could speak on this issue for hours, but I'll try and be as brief as possible. Last summer, I feel that I was accused of representing something that is completely against my belief system when I was said to be part of a group representing Acorn. At one point, the Citizens for Equity in Government was called by a man who had the audacity to ask us if we had a conscience. Yes, we have a conscience. We don't question the collective conscience of people who were basically labeling us communists when we had invited one man to speak about getting out the vote. Do people here have a problem with people voting? I know that I don't. I tend to disagree with some of the people I associate with about individuals showing an ID when they vote, because in my opinion, one fraudulent vote is one too many. It denigrates the integrity of the system. But I also don't want to see a poor person denied the right to vote, and I don't want to see our military troops serving perilously overseas not having their vote counted. And as we have seen in the past, every vote is important. All this gentleman did was spend 30 minutes talking about getting out the vote before we talked for an hour about the CEG's point of view on the ward-specific voting issue. It was an open meeting. It was open to all. But there were people that told others not to go because it was an Acorn meeting and they shouldn't associate with Acorn. And then they purported to know what the meeting was all about. Like Danny Hearn said last week, people are down on what they're not up on. He's right. Pushing forward ignorance as fact is not a virtue. Trying to keep people from obtaining information about public issues of relevance is therefore not virtuous. But in reality, we know this is all about politics, don't we? We know this is about enabling a small minority of people to hold power over a small city by controlling the message disseminated to the people. We have repeatedly asked for the cost of the structure that was built on Union Square. There is a paper trail that shows that we have been asking for those numbers for over a year. Lo and behold, a few days before the referendum vote, I was informed that the information was available in this very building, and so I released the fact that I had been told that those numbers were available to my associates with the CEG. A friend and a fellow member of the CEG. Thank you. May I continue? Thank you. A friend and a fellow member of the CEG went to City Hall and got a Hickory Incorporated well-crafted runaround, in my opinion. Unfortunately, due to my personal diligence, I know what happened that day. And my associates and I are very disappointed in how some, not all, of our public servants represented the public that day. But we should have known better from the start. The document dump provided that day seems to have been just a political ploy aimed towards the Hickory Daily Record, I don't know where they are now, to send the message out that Hickory Incorporated had cooperated fully with the CEG. So what was all the fuss about? This was a little political gambit meant to sway the public's opinion a few days before an election. Isn't it ironic that you are here tonight to receive an accounting award when the budget, implementation, and accounting involving this project on Union Square would never pass an audit? Rebecca Englefield takes the law more seriously than anyone I know. What happened that day truly does bother her. She was writing down questions asking for public information as sanctioned by North Carolina General Statute 132 when she was arrested. Arrested while asking for information that she was entitled to. Arrested for information that has not been provided to us to this day. One of the questions is, what was the cost of the fabric used for the sales on the Square project? Mr. Mayor, at the last council meeting, you said this information would be provided if it were separately available. Are you telling me that we can't find out from the company that implemented the construction of this project, the cost per yard of this material, and the square yardage used to build this project? We can do the math. If you are telling me that there was such a lack of oversight on this project, then I am truly embarrassed. You all are entrusted with a fiduciary responsibility to operate fully on the public's behalf, whether most of the public chooses to willfully be ignorant or not. I really could care less about the Chattanooga Way. It seems to me that the Chattanooga Way equals hot water. I am sure that you know that...
6 minutes.
May I continue, please?
Are you getting...
I'm wrapping up. I am sure that you know that the CEG doesn't like the entire process surrounding this structure, but the structure has been built. The structure belongs to the public. The dollars belong to the public. And the information belongs to the public. So let's move forward. I am sure that Alderman Lell remembers an incident the last few days of 9th grade when a group of us got sent to the principal's office because we were actually looking out for the interests of one of our teachers' safety, only to find ourselves to be the ones in trouble. The only mistake that Rebecca Englefield made that day is one I have always understood. Sometimes you have to step back and live to fight another day. Today is another day, and tomorrow will be another day. Thank you.
Next, Mr. James Davis, who is listed no address or number.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jay Franklin Davis, in Hickory, North Carolina. In the name of God, the benevolent promotion. I would like to come before City Council briefly because I am suffering from something that someone who was supposed to be teaching me and over me that happened 30 years ago, and I'm still suffering from it today. I hope the City Council doesn't make those type of decisions where we will be suffering from something 30 years from now. I want to ask the City Council about their bidding processes on their projects in the city. It doesn't matter what it is or the amount of it. I would like to know, how do you come about with your bidding processes? You know, for an example, what I brought about last City Council meeting of OHB getting the thing on the square, the selling of alcohol on the square. I'd also like to reiterate something that I've said several times before. I think twice in a City Council meeting. I would like for the City Council to set up a civil police review board with subpoena capabilities. I am getting earfuls of information about what's going on with the Hickory Police Department, who is employed by you and who is employed by us too, because we pay those salaries. And another thing, lastly but not least, as Mr. Hearn spoke about last week about the being down on information, we know that the city council meetings being televised doesn't cost that much. We don't need multi-million dollars of camera equipment because it is online now at www.hickoryhound.com, and it's not any expensive type of equipment. Take a look at it. It's good quality too, audio and visual. And once again, I would like for the city council to put on, well, I'd like for the record to show, I would like city council to explain to us, the citizens of Hickory, and particularly my group, our group, Citizens for Equity and Government, the bidding processes in which our monies are used. We'd like to have a civilian police review board with subpoena capabilities. And also, I'd like to bring back up the televising of these city council meetings, because I've heard where it was said myself that this city council should be the yardstick for city councils across the state and across the United States. Let's show them what it is. Televise the city council meeting so everyone, especially in the city of Hickory, will know what we're paying for when you say things well crafted. Thank you.
We have a motion to approve the minutes of May 7th.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Seaver, second by Mrs. Patton. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous, all members are present. Motion to reaffirm and ratify in second reading.
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Patton, second by Mrs. Fox. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed no. Motion carried. Any items to be removed from the consent agenda? We have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Mrs. Fox, second by Mrs. Patton. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That's unanimous. New business.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first item of business this evening is a public hearing. And prior to opening the public hearing, I'll ask the city's principal planner, Mr. Cal Ogilvie, to come to the podium. Mr. Ogilvie is going to present a voluntary satellite annexation request. And then City Council can hold a public hearing to discuss that.
Thank you, Greg. Mayor Wright, Mr. Council, Mr. Crowe. The item before you tonight is a request for a voluntary satellite annexation. The applicant for the particular petition is Ashton Properties, which is located in the Shaw-Mecklenburg area. They're acting on behalf of Ms. Meadow, who is the owner of the property. The location of the property consists of a portion of 3,531 Springs Road Northeast. It's a little shy of an acre in size for the property. It's located approximately 2,500 linear feet from the proper boundary of the city of Hickory. And the request for annexation is being done mainly to connect to the city's sewer system. Residential development, which is getting ready to take place, is about 8,500 square foot Family Dollar retail store. Property in question is shown in red. And this being Springs Road, this is McDonald Parkway, across from Springs Road. The areas in blue are actually part of the city limits. This is a satellite annexation. This is Food Line Shopping Center at this particular location. This will be where the Surplus Diner is actually up on Springs Road. And the area shown in yellow is actually the city's ETJ or territorial jurisdictional area. Again, this being the proper city limits, we're about 2,500 feet from this area. We are close to the satellite annexation, but our annexations are actually measured from the proper boundaries. With respect to zoning in the area, as I indicated earlier, it's all within the city's ETJ, and the property is on CC2, which is commercial corridor. It's a commercial type zoning, and it's commercial, retail, office type land uses in the area there. As you can see from our ortho photographs, the 2010 ortho photograph, again, this is the Food Line Shopping Center, and this is the subject property under consideration of annexation. It's going to be under construction probably in the next few years for the Family Dollar store. With that, I'll close and say that staff did analyze this petition for compliance with all city standards and statutory requirements for annexation, and they did analyze it after public services were available and determined that all were. And with that, I'll close and say staff recommends approval of annexation. I'll be more than happy to answer questions you may have.
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Overby.
Yes, sir.
We will now have our public hearing on this issue. The protocol is we allow 15 minutes for people speaking against the proposal, and then 15 minutes for those speaking for the proposal. Then we allow 5 minutes rebuttal and serve rebuttal. We ask no cheering, no jeering, and we'll be respectful of each other's viewpoints. I'll declare the public hearing open and ask if there's anyone who would like to speak against this proposal. Is there anyone who would like to speak for this proposal? There being no one desiring to speak, I declare the hearing closed and ask for motion or discussion.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Seaver, second by Mr. Meisner. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. It's unanimous.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next item of new business is a presentation of the 2013-14 recommended budget. A lot of thought, conversation, a lot of work goes into preparing the budget each year. And sometimes when we talk about the budget, people's eyes begin to glaze over. It can be kind of a tedious topic. But recognizing that we have some young people with us this evening and grateful to have them here, I thought I would try to have a little bit of brevity and instead talk about pizza. Y'all okay with that? A little pizza conversation. I want to again express appreciation to the department heads, the city staff, and Ms. Hurley. Karen's biggest job takes place in the last month or so when she's doing all the heavy lifting, putting together this document that's important in front of you. Unfortunately, she had an accident, broke her ankle, and of course didn't miss that. In the meantime, Warren and I are making changes to the budget, and she's, bless her heart, making all those updates and changes. So I want to give her special kudos this evening. But also the work from the departmental staff, it's the citizens on our advisory boards. There's just a lot of involvement in putting this together. And this evening I want to spend some time talking about the recommended pizza. We feel like we're bringing you a pizza pie this evening that has a good solid crust, a nice flavorful sauce and cheese, and a couple of toppings. But I also recognize the need to talk about potentially some additional toppings. So Mr. Wood's going to talk kind of about the basics of this $90 million budget. The only action required this evening is for you all to call for your public hearing on June 4th, but we hope we can present this in a way that you all can have a good discussion, policies that this budget reflects. So it's a $90 million total annual spending plan. It is balanced, as I'm required to do by state statute. It is about $4.4 million or 4.73% less than your current budget. Now that sounds significant, and it is. However, Mr. Wood's going to talk in more detail about it. However, that does not reflect a decrease in the level of service. What it reflects is a one-time capital appropriation that you all made in the current year to fund your capital improvement plan for the next several years. And of course, that is not reflected, again, because it was a one-time thing in the current year. That's not reflected in the recommended 2013-14 budget. Yeah, I am recommending a budget that maintains the current property tax at $50 per valuation. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Wood. He's going to go through some of the nuts and bolts of this budget, and then turn it back to me to talk about some of the other items.
Mayor Wright, members of the City Council, Mr. Berry, Mr. Crone. I too would like to thank the department heads and their key staff. We start working on the budget in August time frame, and we go straight through until now, and then we'll start on the next one. I'd like to give a special thanks to Karen. She did, it's a tough job every year. This year she broke her ankle. There's a lot of running, not running this year, but walking back and forth, hobbling back and forth between our office and her office, and I appreciate all the, Karen didn't take a day off. She didn't go home early. She worked all the way through. She got it done. I appreciate that. Just big picture, what we'll look at here is this is the recommended budget for these individual funds. These are your operating funds for the coming year. This is the dollar change. This is the percent change from the current year. So let's start with the general fund. That's your largest fund. Recommended budget is $44.5 million. That's a $1.3 million decline from the current year budget. As Mr. Berry said, there was a one-time appropriation of fund balance to the capital reserve fund to fund your capital program for the next few years. That's coming out of the upcoming year's budget, so that's reflected here. So, it's a 3% decline, but it's pretty much a hold the line sort of budget in the general fund. And I'll go over a few interesting things that we've got and projects that we've got coming up. Water and sewer fund, $23.2 million. That's a $755,000 increase, of just over a 3% increase from the current year's budget. We'll talk about water and sewer rates for the coming year in a minute. Sludge composting fund, that's a sister fund to the water and sewer fund that treats the byproduct from the wastewater treatment plants. That's about a 2.5% increase. And that's a consortium made up of Hickory, Catawba County, and Conover, and we're the operator of that facility and fund. The stormwater fund, help make sure we meet our stormwater regulation requirements. It's a $10,000 decline, but it's 3.8%. Transportation fund, that's basically the airport. $2.2 million recommended budget there, about a $93,000 decline, or about 4%. And again, some of these declines have to do with the decrease in capital funding. As Mick said, there's not a lot of change in the actual service delivery or the operations of these departments. Solid waste fund, $4.8 million, $139,000 decline. Again, that reflects a decrease in capital needs in that fund for the upcoming year. So overall, $76.7 million operating budget. It's an $800,000 decline, or about 1% decline. Again, most of that has to do with changes in capital funding more than anything else. That makes sense. Okay. Internal service funds. Those are funds that exist to support other funds. And again, we've talked about the capital reserve fund. That's where we house money to set aside for future capital projects. There's a major decline there, but again, that has to do with the money that's not coming from the general fund for the upcoming year that did come in the current year. And also, with the completion of the Northeast Wastewater Treatment Plant, we're no longer setting funds aside for that project, so that money comes out. So that's what makes up your $3.6 million decline in capital reserve funding. We are still funding our capital reserve at traditional levels. So So there's nothing different than that going on. It's just some things are dropping off that had been scheduled to drop off. And that's a 45% decline from the current year. The fleet maintenance fund, it's basically no change. And the insurance fund, again, $6.3 million last in the current year, $6.3 million proposed for the upcoming year, so no change. Overall, in your internal service funds, $13.5 million, a 21% decline, but again, most of that has to do with changes in capital, the money we're setting aside on the capital reserve side. So overall, a $90.3 million recommended budget for FY 13-14, a $4.4 million decline, or about 4.7%, but mostly reflecting capital changes. And y'all stop me if you have questions.
Let me ask you.
Go ahead.
Fuel funds in the fleet maintenance?
The fuel reserve, that's set aside in that's a designation in your general fund balance. That's where that comes from. The vehicles are fueled at our fleet facility, but the funds we have set aside, that reserve fund, and I'm going to talk about that as it comes out of your general fund balances. There's a designation in there for that. Here's the number one issue that we're dealing with, or we're trying to get our heads around how this is going to impact us. There's a lot of uncertainty related to state tax reform. Here are the revenues the state of North Carolina, the House and the Senate are talking about taking away from us. And these are local revenues, but they're talking about taking them, our ability to collect these taxes away. The privilege license revenue, that's about $1.1 million to us. The franchise taxes and the telecommunication taxes, those are $2.3 million. Beer and wine taxes, $173,000. And then the hold harmless is almost a different category, but that is expected to expire or potentially expire this year. We're working to try to get it extended. There's a long history of the hold harmless revenue. But we've earmarked money in your contingency fund in case we don't get that. So that was the most immediate. But these other ones, they are talking about taking them away possibly starting the following year. And what that means to us, all those added together is $3.8 million, or over 8 cents on the city's property tax rate. Now, what the state is saying is, in addition to that, they also talked about changing the sales tax rates. But what they want to do, we've talked about this before, the state's overall goal is to lower the income tax, eliminate some local taxes, which we're talking about here, and then broaden the sales tax base to make up for all that. So that's the plan, and also decrease the sales tax rate at the same time. So you're talking to make up $3.8 million, they would have to broaden the base, the sales tax base, by about 60%, based on the current sales tax rates. Okay, so and they're talking about broadening the base by levying the sales tax on more services. About 100 additional services is what the Senate's talking about. The House isn't talking about as much. So the question is, by broadening the base that much, are we going to be held harmless with this $3.8 million, or will there be a windfall? And we don't know. The state is supposedly doing that work to try to figure out on a jurisdiction by jurisdiction basis the impact. And we don't know the answer to that yet. And that's hence the uncertainty that we're faced. So again, they would have to broaden the sales tax base by about 60% more than what it is right now to make up that $3.8 billion. Does that make sense? Other revenue, and there's not a close second in terms of our concerns to what I just showed you. That is the number one concern moving into next year and beyond. Property tax base. It increased by 0.38% after 2 years of decline. This has obviously been the single biggest point of frustration for both city council, the citizenry, and staff and everybody else. If our property tax base were growing by about 2% annually, that'd be about $450,000 in additional revenue. So we'd be having a different conversation than what we're going to have tonight if our revenue base were growing by just 2%. There have been years when it had grown by 4 and 5%, and we haven't seen that the last few years. So this is closer to home where the challenge has been. Property tax revenue for the coming year is still below our 07-08 level. So although we've seen a little bit of, I'll call that recovery in our property tax base, not much. We're still below where we were in 07, 08. And currently, every penny on the property tax rate produces about $450,000 in revenue. We are projecting a 2% increase in sales tax revenue, but you don't get the bang. A 2% increase in your sales tax revenue produces another $132,000 a year, versus the 2% in the property tax revenue, which would be $450,000. Your property tax revenue makes up half of your general fund revenue. So that's a huge, although we're glad to see the 2% increase in sales tax revenue. It doesn't have the same effect that an increase in your property tax base does. And just to give you an example, if our sales tax is increasing $132,000, our street lighting costs are going up $80,000. Okay, so it gets that $132,000 gets consumed by those sorts of things real quick.
On our sales tax, so with the you expect this year to have increased 2% over the previous year.
Yes.
Are we down from our high still?
Yeah, we're still down from our peak in, I think our peak was actually 08, 09, or no, it was 07, 08.
07, 08.
Yeah, we're still, I don't have a number with me, but we're still down from our peak on that as well. Although that has incrementally recovered the last couple of years. Hold harmless revenue, we talked about that. We have $255,000 in money from the state for other revenues that they took away from us years ago. Again, there's a long history related to that. We have that money budgeted. There's an effort afoot to try to get the legislature to extend those hold harmless payments for another year or two. They're listening. We don't know if they're going to approve that or not, but we have budgeted it. If we don't get it, we're going to rely on offsetting that loss in your contingency fund. So that would be used for that. The solid waste fee will go up $1 from $14 per month to $15 per month, recommended. City Council's stated goal in your financial policies is to incrementally move the solid waste fund to where it's self-supporting. Currently, the general fund subsidizes the solid waste operation. So this is consistent with moving that fund towards being self-supporting. And for every dollar we increase the solid waste fee, it produces about $144,000 in revenue, and that gives the general fund that relief that it doesn't have to send that $144,000 $144,000 less than it would otherwise.
How close is that to being self-supporting?
We're saying about $20 is the self-supporting point. I think that's below what GDS charges if you do those on a monthly basis, and we provide more service than Republic does. Water and sewer rates will increase, or recommended to increase 3%. I looked at my bill just to give you an idea what the impact on that. Warren Woods family takes away, the kids take away too many baths or way too clean. I'm trying to cut back on that and say Warren. Family of 5, about $1.70 a month would be the impact on my monthly water bill. So between $1.70 and $1 on the solid waste fee, that's $2.70 for me monthly, starting next year if this were approved. All other fees, recreation fees, fire permitting, all that sort of thing. City Council's policy is to go up by the previous year's consumer price index, which is 1.7%. So that's what's in for most other fees. The SAFER grant, which is the federal grant we got to add 12 firefighters at an additional ladder company. This will be the 5th year. This was the last year we'll get any money in the current year. So we are now picking up about a $500,000 cost related to those, related to that additional ladder company. And we've incrementally been picking that up.
You picked up a bunch.
Yeah.
400,000 this year?
It was around 200,000 was the last.
200,000?
This current year that we're getting. We don't get anything next year.
500,000 next year?
We don't get anything next year. Yeah. It's all.
How much did we get this year?
I think it was about 200.
So we picked up 300.
Yeah.
And we got 5.
Yeah. So that's
we knew this day would come.
Yes, we did. We did. That's not a surprise. We've known that. Personnel. Eliminating 4 full-time positions in the general fund. Chief Holler came on board, did an analysis of the office, the command staff, and at the fire department. He's going to recommend eliminating 1 vacant position, deputy fire chief. The secretary of the engineering division, the secretary of the administrative services department, and a librarian will also be eliminated. That will put us at, and again, all those are vacant positions in the general fund. That'll put us at 648 full-time positions. In 07-08, we had 670. That's the net difference is 22. But when you look at the gross number, it's 40-some positions that have been eliminated over the past few years. Of course, we added 12 through the SAFER grant, so you have to figure that in. So those were vacant positions, and some of those became vacant through the retirement incentives program we offered, which we wanted it to give us some latitude to look at positions and eliminate and move around. We are taking a vacant planning department position that became vacant through the retirement incentives program, and it was a higher paid position. And with that, we're going to create 2 code enforcement officer positions, one in the planning department and one in the police department's code enforcement operation. So we're taking one and creating 2 lesser paid through that. So that also was made possible by the retirement incentives program. We ended up getting 35 people to take the retirement incentives this past year. Adding 1 position at the airport, administrative position, and that will be paid for by the airport. They're self-supporting now. Some folks may be aware that the state of North Carolina was having quite a time with its unemployment insurance fund. Its way out, one of its ways out is to come to local governments and make us ante up. So we're paying a one-time payment of $150,000 to the state of North Carolina to help make their unemployment insurance fund solvent. And that will also come out of your contingency fund.
That's the famous $2.5 billion we owe the federal government.
Yes. Again, that is a one-time payment. So you can see a theme here. We're relying somewhat right out of the gate more on contingency than we would otherwise, so we'll have to keep a real close eye on that. Merit increases will average between 1.5% and 2%. And the way this works in a performance evaluation, an annual performance evaluation, if a coworker is rated standard, he will get, or she will get a 1.5% increase. If they exceed their standards, they will get a 2% increase. And that's all. We don't have cost of living increases or that sort of thing. So it's all wrapped up in merit increases for the coming year. And this is a little bit less than what we did in the current year. It was 2.5 and 2, I believe. In the current year.
We have a history in the past several years of modest or none.
Yes. We went 3 years with no increases. We will continue to move our employee health insurance plan to a compliance-based plan. What that means is every year I go have my blood work done and I get a health risk assessment. It tells me if I have high cholesterol, my blood pressure, well, not through the blood, but I get my blood pressure checked, and a variety of tests for 7 or 8 different things. And I have to be within an acceptable range on each one of those items. And if I'm in the dangerous range, during the course of the year, I have to make some sort of improvement. And if I don't, I'm going to start paying $43 a month. Now, we're already doing that with tobacco users. If I'm a tobacco user and I'm on the city's health insurance plan, I'm paying $43 a month. So this is moving now your total health towards that same sort of compliance-based plan, try to help employees take ownership of their health. It's no longer good, and you just can't live a particular lifestyle and expect the city's health insurance plan to cover all your medical conditions. So we're asking folks to take ownership of their health.
Is that $43 if you have one or more of those conditions? You
just have to make improvement. At this point, you're just having to make improvement. If let's say I've got 3 high risk factors, I just have to make a certain percentage improvement in one of them. And generally what happens when they start making improvement in one, the other ones start improving too, because if it's weight or blood pressure or what have you.
But if they have 3,
it's still just
charge is $43.
Yes, it's still, correct. And it's been pretty well received. Folks drastically, they understand. So we rolled that out last year.
We're not trying to get their money, we just want everybody to get
No, we'd rather them be healthy. No significant changes to the city's benefit package for employees otherwise. We will continue a targeted hiring freeze into the coming year. We started a very comprehensive hiring freeze in January of 2009, which has continued although we have loosened up a little bit. At any given time, there's probably between 30 and 35 vacant positions throughout the city. And the city manager has to approve filling those. The operational budget. The fuel reserve that Mr. Meissner mentioned, we are recommending utilizing another $150,000 in fuel reserves so we can adequately fund departmental fuel budgets. We'll have over $30,000 or $300,000 remaining in this fund after we do this. We may have to tap into it a little bit this year. There may be a budget amendment coming at your next meeting to shore up fuel accounts in the current year's budget before the year ends. But that, City Council set $1 million aside a number of years ago, and that has really helped us. This is eventually going to have to be fixed. We're going to have, when this money runs out, we're going to have to address putting more money on a recurring basis, a recurring revenue source, so we can adequately fund our fuel budgets. What we're seeing is we're not seeing an increased usage. The costs have just been so elevated, although they have come down a little bit later in this fiscal year. Street lighting budget, I mentioned that earlier, due to Duke power increases as well as the addition of some new lights. That's an $80,000 increase. That's an $800,000 annual expense for street lighting. And so a 10% increase will do that to you, $80,000. This is an unfunded need that we've identified. Mr. Berry's going to touch on it a little bit. Public services, we've talked about this before, is identified a need to increase the city's street resurfacing budget or program, funding for that. We are currently on let's just use round numbers, we're on currently a 60-year resurfacing schedule, and they would recommend a 30-year schedule. So here's what that means. Currently, we spend $400,000 a year on street resurfacing. So that has us on, let's say, a 60-year schedule. If we were to double that, which equates to about a penny on the property tax rate, that would put us on a 30-year schedule. If you want to split the difference, do a half a penny at some point, that would be a 45-year schedule. And that's just, and what happens is you may have your street, there may be streets that are resurfaced more often than 60 years, but there may be streets that are resurfaced less often, but that's the average, if that makes sense. So we're not saying we're going to resurface every street during this course of period of time, but when you do the math on that, that's the way it works out.
But few people are on the 30-year schedule.
Yeah, just to give you an example, Cary and Charlotte are on a 45-year schedule. So yeah, there's 30 years would be aggressive. But it would be, we'd make sure we're getting our streets resurfaced around town.
How much did you say a penny?
A penny on the property tax rate is $450,000. So I was just using round numbers. If you have a $400,000 resurfacing budget and you wanted to add a penny on the property tax rate, that would more than double it. But
how long have we been on 58 years?
Well, that's a good question. The last time in 07-08, which was a revaluation year, we increased the street resurfacing budget from $250,000 a year to the current $400,000. So that was an example. We didn't lower the rate, but we did set more money aside by keeping the rate where it was. And that was one of the things that we did, put more money in resurfacing. We have been, I don't know how long we've been on the 60-year schedule. I can get that. I didn't bring that with me.
But it's been a while.
It's been like halfway through the 07 time frame. We peaked a little bit, and due to fuel costs, related to asphalt costs, that level of resurfacing coverage has come down.
We're back to close to where we were before we increased it.
You can basically just peg it to what you see at the pump, because oil prices have gone up.
Now the problem is not potholes, the problem is the depth of the asphalt, right?
It's both. It's both. It can be either or. You can have potholes, you can have disruptions underneath the street, or you can just simply have wearing away from use of those.
But Chuck made a good point. If you have a well-established neighborhood, they may very well be on a 70-year schedule. If you have a neighborhood that has seen a lot of development, a lot of heavy equipment that tears the street up, it's going to be on maybe on a 20-year schedule until
Sewer cuts.
Yeah, exactly. All that sort of thing plays in. So there's variables that play into all that. Board and commission funding levels are at the same
level they are in the current year's budget. External appropriation funding is at the same level. We will continue our participation in the North Carolina Performance Measurement Project to find out how well we do compared to other cities, and well, still they're good ideas. Capital improvements. Okay, so it's pretty much status quo at this point, but there's some interesting projects in the capital side. Good news, our vehicle and equipment replacement schedule is fully funded, but it's not something we want to fall behind on. If you fall behind on replacing garbage trucks and that sort of thing, it's very hard to get caught up, so we feel good about what we've got there and the way we've been able to maintain that schedule. We will partner in this coming year with a variety, and this is just a sampling, a variety of local groups and individuals in the upcoming year to renovate and improve a number of city-owned or service-oriented properties in the community. And just a few examples. The Hickory Community Theater has undergone a major fundraising effort to renovate the old community theater, which is a facility owned by the city of Hickory. It's one of our buildings, but they're raising money to renovate it. We have agreed to partner with them in a project related to that renovation, and we're working with them on fine-tuning what that participation is going to be, but that will be in the upcoming year's budget. You heard a presentation from the Women's Club of Hickory about renovating the Schubert House, which is also a city-owned facility, and Chuck Hansen and I and some of his staff took a tour. It needs a facelift. We've run some numbers on that, and the Women's Club is going to raise money for some furniture and that sort of thing, and we're going to, through our operational budget, put some money into wallpapering, painting, floor resurfacing, just some cosmetic things related to improving the looks of that facility. Structurally, it's in very good shape. It's just the look on the inside.
And it is very well used by our citizens. It is a reasonably low-cost option for weddings, for example. And it's used by fairly broad socioeconomic sectors of our city.
We have the next one. We're going to partner with the Catawba Valley Youth Soccer Association to put some field lights out at Henry Ford Park. We've reached a point, particularly with our spring athletics at Neal Clark, where we can no longer accommodate any growth in our soccer or lacrosse programs. So I asked Mr. McLeod, I said, we need a solution to this, and the solution is lighting some fields at Henry Ford and moving some of our programming out there in the spring. In addition to that, with the lighting, it'll also be open to the public longer hours for the walking track and all that. So CBYSA is going to make a significant contribution towards that project, and in exchange for that, we're going to change a few things in their priority use agreement that will come to you. But we feel real good about that project. That's real exciting. So that'll be that. I've traveled around the state, particularly the western part of the state, to other athletic facilities, and Henry Fork is as nice as any facility, particularly from a natural turf perspective that I've seen in the western part of the state. And adding the lights out there is just going to make that even more so. There's a local family that we will be disclosing in the weeks to come that is going to make a very significant, well into the seven-figure donation contribution, if you will, for a new facility at a city park, and Ms. Surratt's heading that work up, and you'll be hearing about that in the weeks ahead. That's going to be very exciting, and we're anxious to be able to roll all that out to the community. It's going to be something special. And in addition,
can I add something about
yes.
That is absolutely the perfect example of the kind of thing that we want to see happen with Inspiring Spaces. The city is going to make an investment in that project, but it's nominal compared to the amount of investment that's being made by the family. And this will be available for use by everyone, theoretically, in the world, but in Hickory, Uniform, this region.
Right, and that'll be the next few weeks. We'll be hearing much more about that. We are the owners of LP Friends Stadium, and as the landlord, we have certain obligations in terms of maintaining that facility. And there's some money programmed in the upcoming year's budget to do that. In addition to that, we were approached by Hickory Baseball about the possibility of some additional improvements, and we're in negotiations with them, basically finding out what they're willing to put in the pot to make some things happen out there. So those negotiations are ongoing, and that will be something that will be coming to you in the coming fiscal year as well. And of course, the city's general fund is still on course to be debt-free in the next 6 years. So, quick summary. Based on our conversations with management's conversations with City Council over the past few months, we feel like there's generally some broad consensus on the $90 million plan that I just went over. I mean, I know everybody's not happy with every single thing, but there seems to be a general consensus on the $90 million proposed budget for the upcoming year. And however, we do know that there's some additional items that were discussed by members of City Council that are not included in this recommended budget. And I'll turn it over to the city manager now to outline those items. And I'll just close it if there are any questions that you need me before I sit down.
We'll just have you on call.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. Yeah, I'd just like to add, it amazes me, if the revenue line is taking care of itself and the money just rolling in. Laurie back there, I know that she knows this from a furniture standpoint. I know it from a science standpoint. I'm sure everybody up here knows it from some standpoint. If the revenue line is just rolling and rolling and rolling, this job is it's relatively easy. It's a matter of prioritizing. But what our staff have had to do is make all of this work without dramatic loss of services, and the revenue line has not been rolling. So it just amazes me. The morale stays high, the effort stays great, and the results are very acceptable. We'd like to have revenues rolling, but we know where revenues come from.
And I would say on that particular, I think particular sort of pride in bringing forth this balanced budget is the level of capital funding that we're able to do. I mean, if you look through the list in the budget and some of the highlights that Warren said, I mean, for us to be able to accomplish some of those capital items is a testament to working hard.
Yeah, this is it's our city. We're very fortunate. It is incredibly well managed.
So our high school students are sitting there thinking, now what did that have to do with pizza? What was that all about? So add a little bit of levity again here. So your $90 million pizza budget that Mr. Wood just went over, I think is pretty substantial. And I don't want to say that it's without topic. I think when you look at lighting the Henry River Soccer Complex, that is substantial. That's going to have an impact on our children and provide opportunities for additional events to come here to Hickory, which are good for our economy. The LP France Stadium renovations have a lot of potential in a partnership with Hickory Baseball. So I think, our concept is we're bringing you a good solid pizza. But there's been a lot of conversation too about additional toppings. And so I've tried to kind of categorize those for your discussion. Mr. Wood did a good job of articulating the revenue losses. We know for almost a fact, because it's not in the House or Senate budgets, that the $255,000 in hold harmless money you will probably not see. He's talked about the fuel and those cost increases that have continued to go up. We talked about the federal grant that added 12 staff in the fire department ladder company. So even in this time of contracting revenues, we've been able to actually provide a higher level of public safety, and we're proud about that. We discussed the additional street resurfacing. And then the economic competitiveness plan. I want to keep bringing us back to the conversation, the presentation we had at your last meeting. And Danny Hearn came forward and talked about this economic competitiveness plan that you participated in, both with funding and also with staff resources, and elected officials participated in that as well. So the entire community went through this planning process, identified 6 priorities, and 3 of those priorities are things that you have already been talking about and working on. Sites and buildings, the importance of having real estate and buildings to attract new industries to our area. The importance of redevelopment and what are the things that you can do in the government sector to spur some of that redevelopment for private property. And you already have programs in place that the broader community said, wow, that's great. What Hickory's doing makes a lot of sense. That's waiving of landfill fees with Catawba County, as well as grants that you can offer to both raise buildings that are obsolete and to upfit buildings. And you've awarded grants over the last year that have actually put property back in production, created jobs. And then I think I'm probably the most proud of the fact that, again, the broader community looked at what you're doing with Inspiring Spaces and said, that is so critical to this community that it's one of the top 6 things. And so if you think about what takes place in the market, I'm going to show a chart here in a second. We were very concerned about the loss of population in general that we saw between 2010 and 2012. But also concerned about the loss in a key demographic of 20 to 44-year-olds. That population, we're losing it in the Hickory MSA. And so you look at how do you solve that. The first and foremost is the job. Obviously, people move and relocate for jobs. But again, what they need to find in a community is vibrancy. And the term inspiring is the term that we kind of gravitated to, and I think it's affirming that the broader community has said that is so important, and the work that you're doing needs to be replicated throughout the county. So that would add some toppings to our pizza. But when I go to my next door neighbor, Neil, who has Geppetto's Pizza on Springs Road, and tell him I want a pizza all the way, he's going to tell me it costs more than Canadian bacon and pepperoni. So what are your options for paying for these additional toppings? Mr. Wood talked about state tax reform. I'm not going to belabor that, other than to say there is the possibility that may actually be a positive for the city. The fact is we don't know. The 1% prepared meals tax, which we have been pushing in Raleigh and need to continue to pursue, has potential. When, I don't know, but that's still out there as something I think that's relevant and needs to be in the conversation. Just last week, the mayor and Councilman Lael and Assistant City Manager Andrea Surratt went to Washington, D.C. We've been to Raleigh and are having an ongoing conversation at the federal and state level about the story of Hickory and about our situation. And these charts I've alluded to, that's our job loss compared to all the other MSAs in the state of North Carolina. I mean, it's just, it's stark. This is the population loss I talked about. That's that key demographic. We have an important story to tell in Washington and in Raleigh, and we need to continue to seek their support, partnerships, grants, to help reinvent our economy. But ultimately, property tax is the only revenue source over which you have total control. All the rest of these are going to take some state or federal action. Property tax is completely yours to decide. So if we take these categories, or I've kind of grouped into categories, these additional items that are not in the $90 million budget, I've put them into 3 groupings. And again, the first is the revenue losses due to the operational increases and loss of hold harmless fuel costs we talked about, fire department grant. Annual total of $675,000. That would equate to about 1.5 cents on the property tax. Let me orient you to this chart right quick. So this is a dollar amount, an annual dollar amount. This is what kind of property tax increase you would need to generate that dollar amount. And then I apologize, you can't see this, but we have to squish it down a little bit to get it on the chart. But the median home value in the city of Hickory is $151,800 or $600. So if you look at what is a 1.5% or 1.5 cent increase, so your tax rate right now is 50 cents. If you went to 51.5 cents, that would equate to $22.74 a year of an increase to that median home. Okay? Does that make sense? And so I've just gone down here and we've just tallied up the cents to a total of 6.5 or 6.5 cents, and then what each of them equates to in an annual bill for a median home in Hickory. Okay, so the next one I've talked about the revenue loss, the operating increases that we've so far been able to suck up, but we don't know how that goes on within the next 2 or 3 years. We've been able to pull rabbits out of hats and use different sources to cobble that together year in and year out. Frankly, as your staff, we don't know how we continue to do that. You've heard the conversation about your street resurfacing, and then again talking about the economic competitiveness plan. 1.8 million, 4 cents. That is not a scientific in-stone number. I'm saying that if you look at the target-rich environment we've got for redevelopment in this city, we all know the vacant buildings. I haven't tried to put a firm number to how much potential redevelopment costs are to be out there. We are in some pretty significant conversations with Catawba County and with private partners about a industrial park and the potential of shell buildings. So those numbers are starting to come together a little bit. And then, of course, Inspiring Spaces, you just awarded the contract to do the financial analysis of the plan. That's not completed yet. But just for argument and discussion's sake, I'm saying if you were to levy 4 cents of property tax, which would generate $1.8 million, you could borrow around $20 million to fund these initiatives, or you could do a pay-as-you-go kind of approach and spend $1.8 million a year to make those types of public investments and improvements. So that brings you to a total.
Or some combination.
Or some combination, yeah, thank you. You know, again, the pizza analogy. You can choose to put on some mushrooms and some olives, or just, you know, some sausage. Sausage, that makes me think of the budget process, because Mary talked about how smooth it goes. It's like making sausage behind the scenes. It's not very pretty, and I worked in a sausage
But it
plant.
looks pretty when you get it to you.
Yeah, I know. When you get it to y'all, it's tasty and it looks pretty, but I actually did pack sausage one of my first jobs while I was in college, and it's not a lot of fun. It's not pretty. Yeah, it's about like you're on a budget. So your next steps. Your next steps are tonight, of course, to continue your discussion about the recommended piece of the $90 million budget that Mr. Wood did such a good job explaining. Whatever conversation, discussion y'all want to have about the additional toppings. The only action you have to take this evening, or I would recommend you take, is to call for your public hearing on June 4th. You are required to have a public hearing before you can adopt the budget. So at the June 4th meeting, you could receive your public comment, of course, have additional conversation about these, quote, added toppings, and hopefully take a first vote on the budget. Up to you all to decide with or without toppings. You've got my recommended budget in front of you. And then on June 18th, you have your second reading. And of course, the idea is by July 1st to have your new fiscal year begin and to have your budget ready. So I'll kind of go back.
By law, we have to have one ready July 1st.
You do.
Only the state is this.
Only the state and federal government do that. There are some technical things you could get into that other communities have to extend that for a few weeks or a month, but I don't recommend that.
We're not going to sequester or anything.
They want to see hours before we do that.
That's a good chart to leave up there if you don't mind.
That's where I ended. That's the last slide. That's where we are. And we'll be happy to answer questions, but we've done a lot of talking. The floor is yours to discuss your thoughts.
I'll start off. I think it's good that that we've got our basic pizza, as you want to call it, and that we have other options. Obviously, I think it's going to take some time. We don't have a whole lot of time, but we do have a small window here to hear from people out in the community as before we decide which pizza it is that we want to be purchasing here. I think that obviously it's a good idea to have that time to be able to hear back from folks in the community as to what they think they want in a pizza and whether or not they think that we should continue with the budget with the $90 million and have the pizza that you proposed here, or if they're willing and able and what the majority of them think about what extra toppings is needed that we should put on.
I think it's interesting that just the median home values to really tell the story of what someone would pay for it. People thought that resurfacing was very important. It's $15. You're talking $1 and something, $1.penny a month, and that puts a nice spin. I think some people tend to get off on what that tax is going to do versus that's a very excellent slide.
If we had some way to communicate, I'm sure we'll get this communicated. We need to communicate, particularly this slide here, I think, to those citizens, all 40,000+.
Make sure that the headline and all of that is very clear. We don't want people to come to the wrong conclusion. But I agree with you.
I think the first two are maintenance, clearly maintenance items. The third one, we really haven't given the fire and spaces in our development committee enough time to really prioritize, so we're really, might be jumping the gun a little on that. They haven't really prioritized their plans. The first two are certainly maintenance items that we may consider.
But it looks to me like there's two distinct categories. One's needs and one's limits.
Well, I believe over the long run, they're all needs.
I think we help our community grow through the 4 cents.
But I hear you for this
It's
reason.
important.
Here. The first one is like, you know, we would impose taxes for losses that may or may not occur. Because we know we're going to get a different sales tax result. We just don't know what it's going to be. So if we can balance the budget, without doing anything on that first item, I'd have a hard time saying just in case.
And y'all done a great job on this, staff has, but the fire department grant, we had extensive discussion when we had it, and you know, it was anticipated to sort of roll out. It was never, when we accepted that grant, it was never, okay, well, 5 years down the road, we might be looking at a tax increase to be able to fund it. And that we're not. I mean, you've not recommended a tax increase. That's right. So to the standpoint that that's a component up there as a topping, it's already in the cheese, isn't it?
Well, it is, but it isn't in terms of that's going to be an ongoing cost in perpetuity.
Oh, okay.
So it's obviously going to squeeze out other things in your budget. So, you know, it's pretty straightforward if you were to choose to say, well, let's levy a property tax to pay that, then you know it's funded and you don't have to every year cut it from somewhere else to fund it.
Right.
But yeah, as of this year, we do have it funded.
What's home values running now in the county? Have they gone up some now since the big bottom out, or still going down?
I've been told, my friends in the real estate business said it's still flat.
So you got revaluation coming, so that could eat into what you normally plan on getting if those valuations come in low. So there's a lot of ifs right now.
A lot of unknowns.
One thing that I noticed just real quickly look through the actual big budget thing is our undesignated fund balance. And of course, it fluctuates day by day in terms of as a percentage. But right now, it looks like we're a little bit over 25%. Yeah, and the council's priority, council by policies has set it at 25%. So there's some I hesitate to call it a surplus, but there is some money in that undesignated fund balance. By my calculation, we're using the numbers that we're publishing here, we'd be at about 26%, which would be about $450,000, which would be about a penny on the tax rate. So you could divert some of that money, say to street resurfacing, and still be fulfilling the policy as set forth by City Council for 25%, which I think is a rock solid financial.
Well, the one caveat I'd add to that, Councilman Little, is that you could take that one time,
yeah,
and everything we've identified here, you know, your ongoing kinds of things, you could do at one time and spend it on whatever.
Right.
But I wouldn't recommend you do that because you'll dip below your 25% in the second year, third year.
Yeah, right. If you use it as a recurring revenue source.
It's basically a savings account.
Right.
It's your rainy day fund.
Your own personal thing, yeah. You don't want to keep tapping that savings account. I mean, and, you know, as long as I've been on, we've had over 30% on that.
Yeah, that's when the revenues were rolling. But no, we would not want to be a more Oklahoma, bless their hearts, and have another rainy day. Right. That's not exactly what we put it aside for.
But it's there. That fund is there.
It's there for that purpose and other purposes.
I'm a little bit hesitant about using that fund for anything that would be designated as an emergency or something that just needs absolutely.
But I hate to raise taxes if the fund balance exceeds the state policy.
I think my point was that if we get into the fiscal year and we see, wait, we've got an opportunity at a redevelopment project where we could, that money's there, and we wouldn't have to say, well, we didn't include a tax rate for that redevelopment thing. I mean, you know, it gives us some flexibility to move and operate. And I think that's the intent.
We have other funds that we could tap if we had to, but sound management says you don't tap it.
Sure.
And we haven't tapped.
And we tap them from time to time. We tapped that fuel fund.
Yeah.
We created it for a purpose. We used it for that. We're using it up.
You know, along those same lines, you actually took money from that rainy day fund balance that was above the 25%, and you funded your capital program for the next several years. That's what we were just talking about, why the budget's so much less this year. So you have, at different times, in what I consider prudent manners, you know, used those funds for capital expenditures, which are one-time expenditures.
One year that I remember we had to do it to balance the budget. Now, we're not suggesting that this year, I realize that.
Oh, you're the appropriate fund balance, okay.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, I think the picture's going to get a whole lot clearer over the next 6 months. It might get much more clear over the next 2 months. Probably will. But it'll be a long time before we have the effect of the sales tax.
How long do you think it's going to take them to do
municipality
by municipality to determine how that's going to affect everybody? How long do you think it will take them to?
She'll speak up. They're saying they can't hear.
How long do you think it will take them to actually figure out what that sales tax is going to do city by city?
I learned a long time ago never to speculate on what happens in Raleigh. I wish we knew yesterday, but we don't.
We're not going to know until we start taxing it. I mean, we won't know until we read it. We'll know what's in it. I don't know. No, what I'm saying is we don't know what that 60% or so of additional taxable items is going to do for us. It won't be the same for any 2 cities in the state.
No. And how many of them of those other categories are going to be would be exempt from it, and that the final is really 16 other businesses or type, or you're going to whittle down, and we want to have that business.
I will tell you this, we've started the dialogue with Raleigh and Washington, that when bad things happen to the people in this state, that we can at least afford to have it happen to us. And there's money down there, and there's money up there. So, it's going to be a while before all of this sorts out.
Well, I would move that we call for a public hearing on the city manager's recommended budget.
We have a motion by Mr. Lael and a second by Mr. Seaver. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. That's unanimous. Any appointments? Are we to that point now? No appointments? Matters not on the agenda? General comment.
Someone will start this week. So, hope everyone will be down there.
Please see you on Memorial Day. Right? Is that right, Mr. Gibbs?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Gibbs is going to represent the city because I have come.
Mayor, I'd like to just do a quick recap of the trip up there. Down there is Raleigh, up there is DC. Mayor Wright and Assistant City Manager Surratt and myself spent last Thursday in Washington, D.C. We had to go up Wednesday night because we had a day full of meetings. Started bright and early, and we had the opportunity to meet with Marlowe and Company, who is lobbyist for the city. And we had sort of planned the day from there. They had, and Mrs. Surratt had set up 5 different meetings with all of the representatives at the federal level from the Hickory area. So that meant we met directly with Representative Fox, Representative McHenry, and Representative Mark Meadows, who is new for us. Apparently he has just a little bit of Burke County. We then had the opportunity to meet with the senior staff of Senator Burr and Senator Hagan. One of the things that I think that one of the objectives of going up there was to, and I think the mayor put it really well during one of our first meetings, is we really want our federal legislators and our state legislators to be thinking about Hickory, to have Hickory on their minds. Now, when we sat down and talked to them, we showed them the charts that Mr. Berry showed, particularly the one with the job loss that shows that red bar graph way in the negative. And without exception, that raised eyebrows with all the folks that we met with. The couple takeaways, I think, first of all, is we've got a good open dialogue with these offices now. And not that we didn't have, we were communicating, but I think some things are best handled sort of face to face. And this is, when you're meeting with your federal and state representatives, I think that is that's the case. So that's going, and we talked about follow up within 6 months to 12 months. It was suggested to us that the EDA, or the Economic Development Administration, might provide some assistance to Hickory. Now, they don't normally, the city staff couldn't call them and ask the EDA to pay a visit to the community, but they will do so if a congressman asks them to visit the district and to visit. And all of our representatives said they would work to make that happen. So we're expecting sometime in the next several months to have a visit from either the field office of the Economic Development Administration, or perhaps even DC folks, or the DC office. What we've heard from them is that that there are opportunities. There are some things that are available to communities like ours. They generally are in the realm of projects that are, to use a coined term, shovel ready. In other words, they're just sitting there waiting to go, waiting for money. And so we think we've got some of those in the works that we can be discussing with the EDA when they're here. The other thing we talked about, we spoke to them about inspiring spaces. We got very positive reception from our local representatives about what we're doing as a community. What we told them was that we have been the kind of community that has tended to kind of look after itself. We have not struck out and had our hand out all the time asking for help. But and this was not in the case of the Inspiring Spaces Initiative or our Economic Competitive Initiative. That's not what we're doing either. We're not up there in Washington D.C. saying, you know, come bail us out. You know, what we were asking them to be one piece of a partnership, and I think the mayor alluded to it, that would involve the city and investment from the city and its taxpayers, private individuals, and then federal and state governments to make the Inspiring Spaces plan and economic competitiveness plan a reality. That we gave them the literature on Inspiring Spaces. We didn't really discuss any specific projects. All of them wanted to understand about the Gallup poll that placed us so low in the rankings as to resident satisfaction, and that information has been furnished to them. So I think it was a tremendously successful trip. I think we will see quite directly and concretely some federal officials in the area with the charge from some reason. You know, our representatives up there have some influence, I believe. So I think that there will be some. It won't be just. They just won't be. The EDA won't be in here just shaking hands and making an appearance. What I'm expecting them to do is get in here and see what they can do to help. So I don't know, Major, do you have any other observations?
Well, these are anecdotal things, but Congressman McHenry, I thought it was very interesting. You know, we really put stuff in front of them that they hadn't put in front of them at one time before. And we just put a couple things in front. We said, this is where we are, and we did nothing to get here. Okay? And so what we talked about is that slide. I think you taken it down. That the $18 million. Remember the $18 million? You know, our vision is $18 million of our money. We're going to have to put something in there. $18 million of private investors, $18 million of federal and state, and suddenly you've got $54 million, and that's real money. So, but Patrick McHenry said, and I think this, he said, my goodness, he said, you know, all we hear up here is Flint, Michigan. He said, their numbers aren't as bad as yours. Okay? So I said, okay, it's in your district. We're ready to work on this. What are you going to do to help? Huh? And we said it that bluntly. I said to Mrs. Fox's representative, I said, this is in Mrs. Fox's district, 185th out of 189. Mr. Lale said, far lower than anybody else in North Carolina. And I said, shame on you, Mrs. Fox. And then I said, just kidding. But the point is, we are in it together, right? And we are, it's not like we're going up there and saying, we aren't going to do anything because our people have suffered enough. We said, we're doing this But we need to parlay this with here and here and here. And we do the same thing in Raleigh. This is the metropolitan area. Think about how many people in Raleigh represent our metropolitan area. And we need to have them, Mr. Lell pointed out, we want thinking about us every 3 or 4 days. When they hear something that, hey, there's a good idea here that might help somebody, their first thought is, how can that help Hickory? Because Hickory needs it and deserves it more than anybody else in the state. So that's all I wanted to add. But it was a good meeting, very productive. Our lobbyists went with us, but we made it clear this was not a lobbying trip. You know, we arranged this trip. Mrs. Surratt made the schedules and all, and we happened to have those lobbyists with us because we're paying them to do it anyway. Huh? They help with grants. Yes, they help with grants, and they have helped. They have helped us in the past. They will in the future, and they're good folks. But the point I was making is, we're not going up there saying, our lobbyists said it'd be a good time for you all to come up here and show your faces. We went up there and explained, here's what we've done, here's what we're lining up. We're lining up inspiring spaces. We're lining up shovel-ready sites. We're lining up demolition and renovation. And we need all the funding help we can get to make it happen. And I believe it's going to work. Now, it's only going to work when we follow up, as we already have, by sending them more information. We've got letters here that we're going to send to them, thanking them for their time. And I'm going to call them individually in about 2 weeks and say, have you thought about Hickory since we were there? And I want them thinking about Hickory when they hear there's $8 million out there for somebody. That's all I have. Anything else?
Well, I just wanted to mention on the Hickory Daily Record website, there's a survey going on now for local folks to weigh in on what they think about Hickory, good place to live, trying to get out of town fast as you can, or they just by choice. I think it was still up yesterday. I don't know about today. Also, let everybody know the school will be out at the end of this week. More youngsters wandering the streets during the day. It's going to be a longer break than usual. So, probably close to a month extra vacation time. Anthony, I know he's smiling on me. It's going to happen soon. It's going to get a longer break. They did get a shorter break last year, so they're making it.
Are we going to have swimming lessons this summer? All right. Thanks to our guests. Thanks all of you for being attentive. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Meisner, second by Mr. Seaver. All in favor say aye. Aye. Is there anybody opposed? Never have had a opposed.